A former casino pit boss just revealed something that could change everything you thought you knew about winning big on a slot machine. His name is Marcus, and he spent 11 years managing the floor at three different casinos in Nevada. What he's about to tell you isn't about how to win. It's about what happens in the critical 72 hours after you win. And according to him and 22 other former casino employees I spoke with, those 3 days determine whether you actually keep your money or whether the casino takes it all back. These former workers wanted this information public because, in Marcus's words, they felt like they were part of a system designed to hunt winners. What I'm about to share with you are 10 specific things that change the instant you hit a big jackpot. And number 7 involves something casinos are legally required to hide from you until it's too late. Change number 1. Your player card gets flagged in the system. The moment you win $200 or more on a slot machine, something happens that most people never see. Your player's club card gets automatically flagged in the casino's management system. Marcus tells the story of a woman who hit $4,800 on Wheel of Fortune on a Saturday afternoon. She was ecstatic, celebrating with her friends, taking photos of the machine. What she didn't know was that within seconds of her win registering, a digital profile was being built. The system recorded the exact time of her win, the specific machine location, her average bet size for the session, and most importantly, it calculated something called her theoretical loss. This is the amount the casino expected her to lose based on her playing history. The system then compared her actual win against what she should have lost, and the difference created what Marcus called a deficit score. For this woman, the math showed she was up $6,300 for the month. The consequences weren't immediate. She cashed out her ticket, had a nice dinner, went home happy. She returned the following week, excited to play again, expecting the usual treatment she'd received as a regular player. But when she went to the Players Club desk to check her offers, something had changed. The free room she'd been getting every month was gone. Her comp dollars had been reduced. The friendly host who usually called her twice a month hadn't reached out. She asked the Players Club representative what happened, and they gave her a vague answer about offers being based on recent play levels. What they didn't tell her was that her account had been systematically downgraded because the casino's algorithm determined she was a short-term liability. Marcus explained that this happens to thousands of winners every month, and most people never understand why their treatment suddenly changes. But that's just the computer system. Wait until you hear what actual humans start doing. Change number 2. A slot supervisor gets a silent alert. Within 90 seconds of a significant win, a slot floor supervisor receives a wireless notification. Former slot supervisor Jennifer spent 7 years responding to these alerts, and she describes what happened when an elderly man hit $12,000 on Buffalo Gold on a Thursday morning. Her pager vibrated with a code that told her the machine number, the win amount, and a priority level. Wins over $10,000 got a red priority code, meaning she needed to be at that machine within 2 minutes. When she arrived, the man was sitting there stunned, staring at the screen, his hands shaking. Jennifer's job was to congratulate him enthusiastically, verify the win, and then something most people don't realize. She had a checklist on her tablet. She documented his approximate age, his emotional state, whether he appeared to be sober or showed signs of intoxication, whether he was alone or with others, and his immediate reaction to winning. The man was celebrating loudly, maybe too loudly, and Jennifer noted possible intoxication in her report, even though he'd only had 2 beers over 3 hours. That documentation becomes critical for reason number 5, which is going to shock you. Jennifer explained that supervisors are specifically trained to be extra friendly, to make winners feel special and valued, but every word of conversation is strategic. She asked him how long he'd been playing, whether he came to the casino often, what other games he liked. His answers went directly into the casino's database, building a profile that would be used against him. And speaking of people watching you, what happens next involves technology that most winners never notice until it's far too late. Change number 3. Security cameras redirect to your machine. The moment a jackpot registers in the system, Something is happening above your head that you'd never suspect. According to Derek, a former surveillance operator who spent 9 years in casino control rooms, when a woman hit $8,500 on Lightning Link at 3:47 p.m. on a Wednesday, he received an automatic alert on his monitor. Within 15 seconds, he had redirected 4 different cameras to her position. The main ceiling camera zoomed in close enough to capture her facial features in detail that would satisfy facial recognition software. A secondary camera angled to record her hands and the machine screen simultaneously. A third camera pulled back to wide angle, documenting everyone within a 20-foot radius of her location. And a fourth camera, one that most people don't know exists, focused on her purse and phone. Derek explained that this isn't just about preventing cheating or verifying the win. The casino is building a comprehensive profile. The facial recognition software doesn't just identify her. It cross-references her face against databases of known advantage players, people who've been banned from other properties, and even databases of professional gamblers shared between casinos. But here's what makes this particularly invasive. Derek was required to keep those cameras on her for her entire remaining visit. When she got up to use the restroom, a camera followed her path. When she went to the casino restaurant and ordered a salad and iced tea, that was documented. When she sat at a video poker machine for 18 minutes, that was recorded. Most disturbing to Derek was tracking who she talked to. The woman had a brief conversation with another player near the restrooms. Just casual, friendly chat, according to the audio he could hear. But he was required to get a clear facial capture of that person too, and run them through the same database checks. The casino wanted to know if she had any connections to known advantage players, or if this was potentially part of a team operation. She had absolutely no idea that for the next 6 hours, until she left the property at 9:53 p.m., her every movement was being tracked, recorded, and analyzed. Derek said this was standard protocol for any win over $5,000, and the footage is kept permanently in the casino's archives. But cameras aren't the only technology tracking you. What I'm about to tell you involves something in your pocket right now. Before I reveal what that technology is, I really need you to hit that subscribe button because casinos don't want this information spreading. And let me know in the comments, what's the biggest jackpot you've ever hit? And did you notice anything strange happening afterward? Change number 4. Your cell phone activity gets monitored. This revelation comes from an IT security contractor named David, who worked for 3 major Las Vegas casinos between 2016 and 2022. He tells the story of a man who won $50,000 on Dragon Link on a Saturday night. The man did what most people do. He connected to the casino's free Wi-Fi to text his wife a photo of the winning screen. That decision gave the casino access to more information than most people would ever voluntarily share. David explained that when you accept the terms of service for casino Wi-Fi, buried in paragraph 11 of the agreement you didn't read, you're giving them permission to monitor your network activity. The casino system logged that this man, within 8 minutes of his win, searched for how to avoid slot taxes, how much tax on casino winnings, and casino tax loopholes. Every search was recorded and added to his profile. But it goes further than that. The man had downloaded the casino's player app 6 months earlier to track his comp points. What he didn't realize was that app had permissions to access his photo library, and the casino's data analytics team could see he'd been taking screenshots of his slot wins and losses, indicating he was tracking his gambling more carefully than casual players do. They could see he'd recently searched YouTube for slot machine strategy videos. And because he'd enabled location services, they knew he'd visited 4 other casinos in the past 30 days. All of this data was compiled into a risk assessment profile. The system flagged him as a potential advantage player, even though he was just a regular guy trying to be smart about his gambling. The most disturbing part, according to David, was what happened next. While still on casino Wi-Fi, the man searched for IRS tax attorney and casino winnings legal advice. This triggered what David called a secondary flag. The casino interpreted his research about taxes and legal issues as indicating possible sophistication or intent to avoid proper reporting. His player account was marked for additional scrutiny on future visits. And here's the part that David said made him uncomfortable with his job. For the next 3 weeks, the man received targeted advertisements on his phone for IRS tax attorneys, casino legal services, and even gambling addiction resources. These weren't random ads. The casino had sold his data to marketing partners who specialized in targeting gambling winners. The man told a slot attendant during his next visit that he thought his phone was listening to him because the ads were so specific to his situation. He had no idea the casino had documented his every digital move. And if you think that's invasive, wait until you hear about the actual people who start following you. Change number 5. You get assigned a host you didn't ask for. Within hours of a significant win, something happens that most players interpret as the casino being generous and recognizing their value. The reality, according to Patricia, a former casino host who spent 13 years in player development at 2 major casinos, is far more calculated. She tells the story of a woman named Sarah, an elementary school teacher who hit $22,000 on Wheel of Fortune during a rare weekend getaway. Sarah was a casual player who visited the casino maybe 4 times a year, usually spending $200 or $300 over a Saturday afternoon. She'd never had a host, never received personalized attention beyond the standard Players Club offers. That changed within 3 hours of her win. Patricia received an automated alert on her tablet that included Sarah's win amount, her player profile showing lifetime theoretical loss of only $2,800, and most importantly, a calculated reinvestment probability score of 73%. This score, generated by the casino's analytics software, predicted that Sarah had a 73% chance of returning significant portions of her winnings, if properly managed. Patricia was assigned to make contact before Sarah left the property that day. The approach was carefully scripted. Patricia introduced herself near the cage while Sarah was waiting to cash her ticket, and congratulated her warmly and casually mentioned that she'd noticed Sarah was having a great day. She offered to expedite the paperwork, brought Sarah a complimentary glass of champagne, and during the conversation asked friendly questions that seemed like small talk, but were actually intelligence gathering. She learned that Sarah was celebrating her birthday, that she'd come alone because her husband didn't enjoy gambling, that she was considering what to do with the money, maybe some home repairs or a vacation. Every detail went into Patricia's notes. Before Sarah left, Patricia gave her a business card and mentioned that as a valued guest, she'd love to offer Sarah a complimentary room and dinner on her next visit. No strings attached. Sarah felt special. She thought the casino was rewarding her loyalty, even though she'd barely been a regular customer. What she didn't understand was that Patricia had specific quotas for reinvestment. Patricia's performance was measured by how much money her assigned players returned to the casino, and hosts who consistently hit their reinvestment targets received substantial bonuses. The generosity wasn't generosity at all, it was an investment strategy. But here's where it gets really calculated. Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia called Sarah 3 times. The conversations were friendly, personal, asking about her week and mentioning upcoming entertainment events at the casino. Patricia had been trained in specific psychological techniques to create what the industry calls artificial friendship. By the 3rd call, Sarah felt like she and Patricia had a genuine connection. When Patricia offered a free room for the following weekend, mentioning that she'd love to see Sarah again, Sarah felt almost obligated to accept. She didn't want to disappoint Patricia, who had been so kind and thoughtful. Patricia coordinated with floor managers to track Sarah's play in real time during that return visit. When Sarah sat down at a slot machine, Patricia received alerts on her phone, showing Sarah's bet size, win and loss amounts, and session duration. If Sarah started to walk away after a losing streak, Patricia would appear with a complimentary drink or a food voucher, anything to extend the session. The offers were adjusted based on Sarah's exact play patterns. If she was betting higher denominations, Patricia would comp a nicer restaurant. If she seemed frustrated, Patricia would suggest trying a different machine, always steering her toward games with higher hold percentages. Patricia admitted that she felt like a predator. Sarah ended up returning 4 more times over the next 2 months, each visit carefully managed through Patricia's combination of genuine seeming friendship and calculated manipulation. Sarah lost $8,000 of her original $22,000 win, and she did it while feeling grateful for how well the casino was treating her. And this relates directly to revelation number 7, which involves something casinos are legally required to hide from you. But before a host ever contacts you, something else happens that most winners never notice, and it involves the machines around you changing in ways that are designed to keep you playing. Change number 6. The slot machines around you get adjusted. According to multiple former slot technicians who worked for different casino operators, when a man hit $18,000 on 88 What Eat Fortunes on a Tuesday evening, something happened to the 12 machines in his immediate vicinity within 20 minutes. Modern slot machines operate on server-based gaming technology, which means their configurations can be adjusted remotely from a central system without anyone physically touching them. The technicians explained that when a significant win occurs, the surrounding machines are often placed into what's called attraction mode. The audio levels on nearby machines were increased by 15%. The visual effects became more frequent and more vibrant, with celebration animations triggering even on small wins. Most significantly, the promotional bonus rounds on several machines near his location were set to trigger more frequently for the next 2 hours. This isn't about changing the actual return to player percentage, which would require gaming commission approval, but about adjusting everything around the core math to create an environment that feels hot and lucky. The man, still riding the emotional high of his $18,000 win, decided to play a few more spins on a different machine while waiting for his paperwork. He noticed that the machine next to his big win seemed to be hitting bonus rounds constantly. Another player, 2 machines down, hit a $400 win and celebrated loudly. The entire area felt electric, like the universe was pouring out jackpots. What he didn't know was that the casino had deliberately created that environment. He sat down at a Buffalo Gold machine 3 spots away from his original win, thinking the whole section was running hot. He started at $2 bets but quickly escalated to $5 bets, because everything felt right. Over the next 90 minutes, he lost $6,000, convinced the entire time that he was on the verge of another big hit because of how active all the machines around him seemed. One former technician said he felt complicit in theft when he implemented these attraction mode protocols. The technical documentation from the slot system manufacturer explicitly described these features as player retention tools designed to capitalize on winner psychology. Some systems even allowed casinos to adjust the denomination options available on nearby machines, temporarily removing lower bet options to encourage higher wagering from players caught in the excitement. The man eventually left the casino still up $12,000 from his original win, but the casino had successfully recovered a third of his jackpot before he'd even finished his first visit. Now you might be wondering if there's anything even more calculated than that. There is, and it's something casinos are legally required to keep secret from you until the moment you have no choice but to comply. Change number 7. Tax paperwork is used to build a psychological profile. This story is heartbreaking, and it comes from a former casino accountant named Michelle, who spent 8 years processing jackpot paperwork at a major tribal casino in Connecticut. She describes what happened when a retiree named Frank hit $35,000 on Ultimate Firelink on a Thursday morning in March. The moment Frank's win registered over the once $200 threshold, federal law required the casino to have him fill out a W-2G form for IRS reporting. This is the part everyone knows about. What Frank didn't know, and what Michelle says most winners never realize, is that the casino collects and records far more information during this process than the IRS actually requires. When Michelle sat down with Frank to complete his paperwork, she had a tablet with a digital form that looked official and government mandated. The first page contained the standard information: his name, address, and social security number. But as she scrolled through the subsequent pages, the questions became more invasive, and Frank, believing this was all legally required, answered everything. The form asked about his employment status, and Frank explained he was retired from a manufacturing job. It asked about his estimated annual income, and Frank hesitated before admitting his pension, and Social Security gave him about $42,000 a year. It asked if he wanted tax withholding, and Frank asked several questions about whether he should take the withholding now or pay later, expressing concern about a potential tax bill he couldn't afford. Every one of his questions, every hesitation, and every comment was documented in notes fields that Michelle was required to complete. Michelle noticed Frank's handwriting was shaky as he signed the forms. She noted that in her report. She observed that he asked about tax implications 3 separate times, and she marked him in the system as tax-averse with apparent financial stress. Frank made an offhand comment about finally being able to fix his roof and maybe help his daughter with some bills, and Michelle documented that he had immediate financial obligations and family financial responsibilities. But here's what's actually happening with that information. Within an hour of Frank leaving with his check, his profile was updated with psychological vulnerability markers. The casino's system identified him as a retiree on fixed income with financial stress and family obligations, which their analytics classified as high-probability reinvestment indicators. 2 days later, Frank received a phone call from someone who introduced herself as a casino financial services coordinator. She offered him a complimentary consultation with a tax professional who worked with the casino to help winners with their tax planning. Frank thought this was a generous service. What he didn't realize was that this tax consultation was actually an asset evaluation session. The tax professional who was paid by the casino asked Frank detailed questions about his overall financial situation under the guise of comprehensive tax planning. Frank revealed that he owned his home with no mortgage, had about $85,000 in retirement savings, and was worried about depleting his emergency fund. All of that information went directly back to the casino. Within a week, Frank started receiving targeted mailers that seemed almost psychically aware of his exact situation. He got invitations to a winner's circle club for guests who'd hit jackpots over $25,000, with images of other retirees enjoying complimentary meals and entertainment. He received offers for a high-limit slot room with promotions that promised better odds and bigger wins, specifically mentioning amounts that could cover a roof replacement or help family members. The marketing was surgically precise because it was based on the exact vulnerabilities he'd revealed during his tax paperwork session. And technically, this is legal because of Clause 47B in the privacy policy that appeared on page 9 of the Players Club agreement Frank had signed 3 years earlier when he got his card. That clause, in dense legal language, gave the casino permission to use any information collected during transactions, including tax documentation, for marketing and customer relationship purposes. Michelle said she felt sick every time she processed these forms because she knew exactly how the information would be used. She was specifically trained to engage winners in friendly conversation during the paperwork process, to make them feel comfortable sharing details about their lives, their plans for the money, and their feelings about taxes and finances. The casino had even brought in a consultant who taught the accounting staff basic psychological observation techniques, how to identify anxiety, how to recognize financial stress, and how to note all of it in the system. Within 6 months of his win, Frank had returned to the casino 17 times. The combination of targeted offers, the winner's circle status that made him feel valued, and the high-limit room that promised better chances had drawn him back repeatedly. He lost not just the $35,000, but an additional $12,000 from his retirement savings. Michelle processed his tax forms on 2 smaller jackpots he hit during those visits, $3,200 and $4,800, and each time she added more observations to his profile, watching the system build an increasingly detailed psychological map of his vulnerabilities. And if that sounds manipulative, revelation number 8 is going to make you angry, because it involves your information being shared in ways that most people never imagined possible. Change number 8, your win gets reported to a multi-casino database. A data analyst named Steven, who worked for a casino management company that serviced properties across 12 states, reveals what happened when a woman won $50,000 at a Reno casino on a Saturday in October. Within 4 hours of her win, her player profile, including her photograph, win amount, playing history, and behavioral data, was uploaded to a central database that connected 47 different casino properties across Nevada, California, and Arizona. This isn't a government database or a regulatory system. This is a private industry network that casinos pay to access, designed specifically to identify and track valuable players across multiple properties. Stephen explained that the woman, who'd never visited any casino outside of Reno, had her profile immediately flagged as a high-value target. The system used her win amount, her playing history, and her demographic information to calculate her lifetime value score, which predicted she would be worth approximately $125,000 in theoretical loss to whichever casino could successfully convert her into a regular high-limit player. Within 72 hours, she received free room offers from casinos in Las Vegas, Lake Tahoe, and Laughlin, properties she'd never even heard of. The offers weren't random mass marketing. Each one was carefully crafted based on her specific profile. The Lake Tahoe property offered her a suite upgrade and spa package because her player profile indicated she'd used the spa at her home casino. The Las Vegas property offered her tickets to a concert by an artist she'd searched for on the casino Wi-Fi. The Laughlin property offered her a quiet weekday package because her playing patterns showed she preferred less crowded environments. She thought she'd suddenly become lucky, that casinos were recognizing her value and competing for her business. What she didn't understand was that she'd been marked as a profitable target, and every property in the network was now actively trying to extract that predicted $125,000 in lifetime losses from her. Each offer was calculated based on a cost-benefit analysis. The casinos would collectively spend about $8,000 in comped rooms, meals, and entertainment to acquire her as a regular player, expecting to profit $117,000 over the next 18 to 36 months. Stevens said the database included detailed behavioral notes from every property. If she showed signs of problem gambling at one casino, that information was available to all the others, not to protect her, but to better understand how to market to her. If she responded well to a particular type of host interaction at one property, other properties would use the same approach. The system even tracked optimal contact timing, learning whether she was more likely to respond to offers sent on weekday mornings or weekend evenings. The woman had become a shared asset, a target that multiple casinos were simultaneously working to acquire and exploit, and she had no idea any of this coordination was happening. Now we're getting to the final two revelations, and these are the ones that former employees say actually kept them up at night, because they represent not just what casinos do now, but what's coming for every gambling winner in the very near future. Change number 9. You get placed on a reinvestment watch list. This is the story that multiple former casino employees said haunted them, and it involves a man I'll call Robert who hit $120,000 on megabucks at a Las Vegas strip casino on a Friday night in June. Robert was 47 years old, worked in construction, had been gambling casually for about 15 years, usually visiting Vegas twice a year with a $500 budget that he'd set aside specifically for entertainment. He'd never won more than $200 in his life. The night he hit the progressive jackpot, he was betting $3 per spin, his usual amount, on a machine near the sports book where he'd just watched a basketball game. When the symbols lined up and the number $120,000 appeared on the screen, he sat there in complete shock for almost 2 minutes before the reality set in. His hands were shaking when he called his wife. He was crying when the slot supervisor arrived to verify the win. According to Elena, a former VIP services manager who was working that night, Robert's win triggered what the casino called a code gold protocol. Within 20 minutes, before Robert had even finished his initial paperwork, a team of 5 casino employees had been assigned to his case. A host was dispatched to introduce herself before he left the building. A casino marketing manager pulled his complete play history going back 7 years across 3 different properties. A data analyst ran his profile through predictive models to assess reinvestment probability. And most significantly, Robert was placed on something Elena called the 72-hour critical retention list, a watch list of high-value winners who were considered at maximum vulnerability for the 3 days immediately following their win. Elena met Robert near the cage while he was waiting for his check to be prepared. She introduced herself as Sarah, his personal host, and told him that the casino wanted to make sure his winning experience was properly celebrated. She handed him a key card to a complimentary suite on the 28th floor, explaining that his current room had been upgraded at no charge. She mentioned that dinner at the steakhouse was completely taken care of, and she'd reserved a table for him and his wife for the following evening when she arrived. She gave him tickets to a Cirque du Soleil show and mentioned that if he needed anything at all during his stay, he was to call her directly on her personal cell phone. Robert felt overwhelmed by the generosity. He kept thanking her, saying he couldn't believe how well the casino was treating him. What Robert didn't know was that Elena had a dossier on her tablet that she'd been reviewing while walking to meet him. The casino's system had analyzed every conversation he'd had with slot attendants over the years. They knew he'd mentioned during a previous visit that his daughter was getting married next year. They knew he'd complained once about his lower back hurting from construction work. They knew he'd told a cocktail waitress that he and his wife had always wanted to take a cruise to Alaska, but never had the money. Elena's approach strategy was built on all of that intelligence. During their 15-minute conversation, she casually mentioned that the suite had an incredible bathtub that might help with his back. Something about the therapeutic jets. She asked if he was celebrating anything special besides the win, and when he mentioned his daughter's upcoming wedding, she made a note on her tablet while saying the casino might be able to help make that even more special. Every word was calculated. Behind the scenes, things Robert never saw were happening constantly. The casino changed his room location from the tower he'd originally booked to a room that overlooked the high-limit slot area. Every time he walked past his window, he'd see jackpot lights flashing below. His path from the elevator to his room was deliberately routed past 3 different high-limit slot salons. The machines nearest to the hotel lobby, the ones he'd walk past every time he left his room, were set to demonstration mode during specific hours, showing jackpot celebration videos on their screens. Elena arranged for seemingly coincidental encounters. When Robert went to the steakhouse for his comp dinner, Elena happened to be having a drink at the bar and stopped by his table to see how he was enjoying everything. When he went to the show, she'd arranged for him to be seated next to another recent jackpot winner, a planted regular who'd been coached to share stories about his wins and talk about his favorite high-limit machines. The psychological manipulation was comprehensive and relentless. 3 days after his win, Robert returned to the casino floor. Elena had been monitoring his movements through the property and received an alert when he inserted his player's card into a machine. She appeared within 5 minutes with a glass of his preferred whiskey, which the EI or system had logged from his previous visits. She sat with him for a few minutes, talking about how the energy felt different this week, how several people had been hitting nice wins, casually mentioning that the high-limit room had been particularly generous lately. Robert decided to try a few spins, just for fun, just to extend the winning feeling. He started at $5 per spin, but the high from his jackpot made those bets feel insignificant. Within an hour, he was betting $25 per spin. He hit a $3,000 win that night and felt like the universe was confirming he was on a lucky streak. He returned the next weekend. The casino had sent him a mailer 3 days earlier with photos from his jackpot win and a personal note from Elena saying she'd love to see him again. Over the next 8 weeks, Robert came back 6 more times. Each visit was carefully managed. Elena knew when he was winning and when he was losing based on real-time tracking. When he was down, she'd appear with encouragement and drinks. When he was up, she'd subtly suggest the high-limit machines where he could really maximize his hot streak. The casino had identified from his behavioral patterns that Robert was susceptible to nostalgia and the desire to recapture that initial winning feeling. They fed that vulnerability systematically. Robert lost $87,000 of his original $120,000 over those 8 weeks. According to Elena, at least 4 different employees expressed concern to management that Robert was showing signs of problem gambling. He was staying later, betting higher, and they'd overheard him on his phone having what sounded like arguments with his wife. Management's response was documented in an email Elena saved before she quit. Let him play. He's an adult making his own decisions. Our job is to provide excellent customer service, not to be his therapist. Elena said she had trouble sleeping after watching Robert's decline. She'd seen it happen dozens of times before, but something about Robert's genuine shock and joy that first night, the way he'd cried when he called his wife, made it impossible for her to rationalize her role in what happened to him. She and several other employees who worked with high-value winners began calling themselves the bleeding team because their job was to bleed the money back from jackpot winners as efficiently as possible. The casino tracked success rates religiously. Elena's performance review included metrics on reinvestment percentages, and hosts who consistently returned 60% or more of jackpot money within 90 days received substantial quarterly bonuses. The reinvestment watch list was real, documented, and ruthlessly effective. Studies that Elena saw in management meetings showed that 68% of slot winners who hit jackpots over $50,000 returned an average of 40% of their winnings within 90 days if properly managed by a host using the protocols the casino had developed. Robert's case was considered a success story in internal reports, but there's one final thing that changes after a big win, and this one represents the future of casino surveillance. A technology that several former employees describe as the most disturbing evolution in an industry that's already built on information exploitation. Change number 10. You get added to a biometric database. A security technology consultant named Richard, who implemented facial recognition systems for 11 different casino properties between 2018 and 2023, describes what happened when a woman hit $95,000 at a tribal casino in Oklahoma on a Tuesday afternoon in September. Within 40 minutes of her win being verified, 6 different surveillance cameras had captured high-resolution images of her face from multiple angles. The footage was automatically processed through facial recognition software that mapped 128 distinct points on her face, creating what Richard calls a biometric signature that's more unique and permanent than a fingerprint. This signature was uploaded to a database that the woman never consented to, never knew existed, and has no ability to access or delete. Her profile was tagged with her win amount, her playing preferences, her bet sizing patterns, and every behavioral observation that had been documented during her visit. Richard explained that this database isn't managed by the casino itself. It's operated by a third-party security company that services casino properties across 14 states. And her biometric profile was shared across that entire network within hours. The woman returned to a different tribal casino in a neighboring state 8 months later, deliberately choosing a property she'd never visited before because she'd enrolled in a self-exclusion program at her original casino after realizing she'd developed a gambling problem. She didn't use her player's card. She paid cash for everything. She believed she was anonymous. The moment she walked through the main entrance, facial recognition cameras identified her. The system matched her face to her biometric profile, pulled up her complete gambling history from the other property, and flagged her as a self-excluded player attempting to enter. But here's where Richard says the technology crosses into deeply disturbing territory. Instead of immediately ejecting her, which is what self-exclusion programs are supposedly designed to do, the casino made a calculated decision. Her player profile showed she was a high-value customer with significant loss history. Security supervisors reviewed her case and determined that her self-exclusion was at a competing property, not their own, and technically they had no legal obligation to enforce another casino's exclusion list. They let her play. Her every movement was tracked by the facial recognition system for the entire 5 hours she spent on the property. The casino knew exactly which machines she played, how much she wagered, and that she lost $34,100 that visit. When she returned 3 weeks later, the system recognized her instantly and alerted a host, who approached her with offers specifically designed around the preferences documented in her original biometric profile. She felt like the casino was being remarkably attentive and generous. She had no idea she'd been under systematic surveillance from the moment she walked in the door. Richard quit his consulting job after implementing systems in his 11th property because of what he learned about how the technology was being used. Casinos weren't just identifying advantage players and self-excluded individuals. They were building permanent surveillance profiles on every significant winner, tracking those players across properties and even across state lines, and using artificial intelligence to predict gambling addiction vulnerability. He reviewed technical documentation for emotion recognition software that several casino companies were testing, systems that could analyze facial microexpressions to identify players experiencing the dopamine rush of winning or the desperation of chasing losses. The goal was to identify optimal intervention moments, times when a player was most psychologically vulnerable to host contact, machine recommendations, or promotional offers. In most states, this is completely legal because you're on private property, and surveillance for security purposes is broadly permitted. The woman discovered the extent of her surveillance 3 years later when she requested her information under a state data privacy law. The casino sent her a 47-page document detailing every visit, every machine she'd played, every conversation she'd had with employees that had been documented, and confirmation that her biometric data had been shared with 17 other casino properties. She described feeling violated and exposed in ways she'd never imagined possible. She'd thought her gambling was a private activity, and she discovered that her face, her behavior, and her vulnerabilities had been cataloged, analyzed, and shared across an entire industry. Richard said industry projections indicate that facial recognition and biometric tracking will be standard in more than 90% of casinos within 5 years, and the systems will be connected to centralized databases that span not just regional casino networks, but potentially the entire national gambling industry. So now you know the 10 things that change the moment you hit a big jackpot. Your player card gets flagged in computer systems that calculate whether you're profitable. A supervisor receives an alert and documents your behavior and emotional state. Security cameras redirect to capture your face and track your every movement for hours. Your cell phone activity gets monitored if you connect to casino Wi-Fi, building profiles of your vulnerabilities. You get assigned a host whose job is to manipulate you into returning your winnings through artificial friendship. The machines around you get adjusted to create an illusion of a hot zone. Your tax paperwork becomes a psychological evaluation tool used to identify your financial pressures. Your information gets uploaded to multi-casino databases that coordinate marketing across dozens of properties. You get placed on a reinvestment watch list with documented protocols designed to bleed your money back. And your face gets added to a permanent biometric database that tracks you across properties and states for the rest of your life. Former casino employees wanted you to know this information because many of them felt complicit in systems that they came to see as predatory. One former host told me that she was trained to think of big winners as inventory that needed managing, not as people celebrating potentially life-changing moments. Another former surveillance operator said he felt like he was working for an intelligence agency, not an entertainment company. These former employees aren't anti-casino. Most of them enjoyed aspects of their work and genuinely liked many of the customers they interacted with. But they're pro-player awareness, and they believe that understanding these systems is the only way to protect yourself from them. Does this mean you shouldn't celebrate a big win? Absolutely not. But knowing what's happening behind the scenes helps you make informed decisions. The most important thing you can do is set a walk-away plan before you win, not after when you're flooded with dopamine and surrounded by manipulation. If you hit a significant jackpot, cash out immediately, leave the property, and don't return during that critical 72-hour window when you're at maximum vulnerability. Turn off the casino Wi-Fi and don't download casino apps that request invasive permissions. Understand that every person who approaches you, every offer you receive, and every bit of generosity the casino shows you after a big win is part of a calculated system designed to get that money back. If you want to know what slot machines these former employees say you should avoid completely, machines that are specifically designed to create the illusion of winning while systematically taking your money. I've created another video breaking down the 9 worst machines in any casino based on insider information from slot technicians and floor managers. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because casinos really don't want this kind of information becoming common knowledge. And let me know in the comments, have you ever experienced any of this after a big win? Did you notice surveillance that seemed excessive, or did a host appear out of nowhere with offers that felt too perfectly tailored to your situation? This information came from detailed interviews with 23 former casino employees across 7 states, people who spent a combined 167 years working in various departments of the gambling industry. Stay informed, gamble responsibly, and remember that the house always has a plan. Now you do too.